computer. Okay. I hate to hear that. Yeah.
Who's that?
What?
Who's that?
That's Sammy had it.
Oh.
16 people
What up, Sam?
watched your class last week. I don't know who these people are.
Hi, Abby. I'll be right there.
Why do you think they're
5 more minutes.
nowhere?
16 people.
I might have been 2 or 3 of those.
Okay.
Oh my God.
I can't tell.
Aye, aye, aye. Okay, so let me move these people over. Okay. Review. Review was that 74 is has first and foremost 74. You could look at it while I'm talking. First and foremost, Ototel Lorainu, we don't see our signs anymore. The Beit HaMikdash is destroyed. They've burned it, thrown it to the ground, burned it, taken axes, chopped it. He tells God, how could you allow such a thing? They have blasphemed your name, and then let me see. Oh, they've made their otots, their signs, the signs. Samo ototam otot. For those of you who, here, you could look at it right here, if you'd like. Give one of those to Saul. He needs a big thing. Yeah. You could hold that. So you see where it says.
I see Navi.
Yeah. You see where it says Samu Ototam Otot on the left side in big letters over there, right? And then they say he says Ototeno Lorainu in column 2. You see the big letters Ototeno. Oh, you don't have one. Yeah. Give one. Yeah, I have a smaller one here. All right. All right. In column 2, you see where it says Ototeno Lorainu. We don't see our signs in Od Nevi. We don't have a prophet anymore of the Lo Itanu Yodea and Ma, and we don't know anymore what's going to be. And then Ad Matai, how long? So we talked about the fact that the Mizmor is always pressing God for relief from the destruction of from the Babylonians, and this is specifically focused on the temple. And we said the reason it's specifically focused on the temple is because the previous Mizmor was talking about the corrupt priests, and since it's talking about the religious establishment is completely wiped out, and when we explain in 73, which is the opening to book 3, that when people look at that Mizmor, they think it's talking about, the bad guys, enemies. It's talking about Israel, its own internal evil people, and not only is it talking about an evil portion of the country, it's talking about its leadership. Not only is it not talking about its leadership, it's talking about its religious leadership, the priests who are considered to be the top of the pecking order, and here they are, the ones completely being held responsible for the destruction. So when he turns to 74, he immediately turns to destruction of the temple. That's why we said last week, you don't turn to the destruction of the city itself till 79, because the progression is very different. Scholars all think it's out of order. It's not out of order, but rather there's a progression that's going on here that they're completely and totally clueless to.
So it's from within, basically. The corruption is from within.
Within the political, the second book talks about the monarchy and the political structure, the military, the judges, all corrupt. all through and through, the rotten corruption, the worst kind, blood on their hands. He says the priests have blood on their hands. It's not just, this is not just, la la la. They're doing very, very bad, extremely. So that's why he turns to the destruction of the temple itself. When he says, Joey, we're just doing a quick review. When it says, since he said in column 1, you see it says, in the midst of your moed, they roar and they make their signs. And then under that, if you're looking in your book, it's just as well. In verse 4, verse 5, he says, Yivada, what is now known is now what's known is the axes and picks and axes that are being used to destroy your temple. So there's two features. One feature is they made their signs the signs. The second feature is that now what's known as a result of the fact that their signs are the well-known signs. You know what's known? What's known is not about you. Is your temple is sawdust. Your name is thrown to the ground. Everything is burned, and so on and so forth. When he turns, when he goes forward, and he says that now we don't see our signs anymore. And when he says in Od Navi, of course, in Od Navi, the Lord reminds you of Moshe, Lord Kam Navi, Od B'Yisrael. We don't have a Navi anymore. We don't have signs. He's, of course, alluding to the signs of Moshe Rabbeinu. And interestingly enough, for those of you who remember that we spoke about signs, Sammy, you certainly know this, your father knows this, well, that the signs that he gets on when he first comes to the Sinai, one of them is to put your hand in your bosom, and he takes it out and it turns into Sarat. We said over there that the interpretation of that was amazing. However, Sassoon says none of the signs are magic. They're just lessons to the Navi about his prophetic powers. And taking your hand out of your, putting your hand in your bosom is a sign of passivity, right? You're at ease, you're at rest. So if you do that, that's why he tells him with the snake. If you hold the snake by its tail, it'll come to bite you. You never hold the snake by its tail. You always hold the snake by its head, of course. So that's the second one. The first one. The second one was this. So he says, we don't see our signs. Then he tells God, how long are you going to let this go on? That they'll do that they'll blaspheme your name. Why are you leaving your hand, right? Right? And take your right out of your bosom. That's a very, very, very strong statement. He's not afraid to tell God, you are being passive, right? How do you do that, right? You told Moshe, the implication is, you told Moshe not to be passive, right? Well, you're passive. Take your hand out. Now, I told you last week, when you think of that, you should not think he's going like this. Why are you being passive? Take your hand out. No. Why are you being passive? What happened to those instructions? Take your hand out of your bosom. Act. If you look at the 44th Mizmor, at the very end of the 44th Mizmor, which is like the counterpart to this Mizmor in Tehillim, it's one of the saddest ones. He tells God, can you give me the Tanakh, Morris? Yeah, this is good. Yeah, okay. Take a look. You'll just see words where it's good for you to get a sense of how the Navi is not afraid It's not chutzpah. That's what I want to talk about. That's why I'm bringing this up. I want to talk about it for a second, just for a second. This is not about tonight's class, but I want you to be aware of it. Take a look at 44 and the very end of it, the 24th verse.
25.
Yeah, you're gonna see it there. Ura Lema Tishan is 24, right? Is that, yeah. Wake up. Why are you sleeping? Adonai. Hakitza, wake up. Al Taznah. Don't reject Laneasah forever. Sounds like this is more. Lema Panecha Testir. Right? Why are you sleeping? Now, if you think about that and you think that he's going like this, Mars, why are you sleeping? No. Why are you sleeping? Also, both. Lema Tishan is why you sleeping. Lema Panecha Testir is the next verse, right? Why are you hiding your face? Lema Panecha Testir, Tishkach Onienu V'Lahasenu, forgetting our suffering, right? Right? Kishahala Fad Nafsenu, Dabakel Aris Vitnenu, Kuma, arise. So these are not the only times. So these are the times of as another example of when you see extreme pressure. You should never think when the Navi talks like this that the pressure is just reading Psalms, la la la. It doesn't work that way. He's being very, very tough and very, very hard. And he's pushing every button that he can. He wants to get God to act. And he is not, as Abi said with chutzpah, it is not, he's being honest. There's a big difference between if he's stepping over the line where he's being rude in the way he talks, but he's being honest in the way he feels over here. And God never tells him, how dare you speak to me like that? You never hear him say, how dare you talk to me like that? Because God gives him all the leeway to act like a normal, like you would, like I would, not to be rude, not to, God forbid, to talk in an improper way to God, but to say that's how he feels. Yeah, that's how he feels. Why are you sleeping? Why are you sitting on the sidelines? Why are you watching what he, remember, he's watching, put it not too close to me, it will fall. He's watching the most heinous crimes being carried out. It's sad to say we're in war now. So he's watching crimes like October 7th. He's seeing that happen in front of his eyes, right? Remember, Yirmiyah writes, he's witnessing the most horrendous crimes being perpetrated. Nothing's happening. So his pressure is that kind of pressure. This should remind you, yeah.
Is he pressured for God to punish those who are doing wrong? Or is he pressured
relief.
Salvation for all country?
Both, but he wants relief. His number one objective is relief.
Yeah.
He wants the people to stop suffering. More than anything, he wants that. He doesn't kill them and let the people keep suffering. Of course not.
No.
He wants them obliterated. He wants the suffering to end, and he wants to see the people.
Will that be the result of obliterating the Shahid?
Oh, who knows? Who knows?
Is that his train of thought?
Who knows?
He's just asking for just.
He's asking for relief. Why are you sitting on the sidelines watching all of this happen, right? You never hear him say, take a gun and shoot them. You never hear that. Never hear that. You're not hearing it now, right?
You think that that's different than Eliyahu's complaint?
I think that Eliyahu and this complaint and Moshe Rabbeinu and Abraham Abinu in the Berit Mena Betarim and Eob, all, there's a common denominator amongst them. If you remember, to answer your question, if you remember, Eob is after their names are Bildad Hashuhi, what is it? What's their three names?
In Eob, you mean?
Yeah, the three three different philosophies. Yeah, so Bildad and yeah, you'll see it. So Sofar Hanamati, yeah, that's another one.
Yeah.
Right. So at the end of the book, God says, "You all don't know what you're talking about. He was right. You're all wrong." Because they're all telling him why this is happening to him. Each one has they represent their philosophies. You must have made a sin. Yeah, you must have this. This is how. But each thing, and he goes, "I'm never there, man. It's all baloney."
Eliphaz had him.
Eliphaz Timani, Bildad Shuhi, Sofar Amati,
Yeah.
and there's a fourth.
And then there's
He's the guy who knows more, and you'll see.
yeah.
And God says they don't know what they're talking about. He's the only guy. What does that mean? He's the only guy. Elihu. That's right. That's an interesting name, right? So he is honest. That's what God said. He says it like it is. He's not trying to get out of anything. He says it like it is. You're just all trying to give these answers that have nothing to do with reality. And that's what he says. And he's right when he says it. He says, that's not true, and that's not true. Not that he doesn't make sins. No, don't tell me this is happening because I did this. Yes, I may be I might have done the worst, but that's not this. This has nothing to do with that. And of course, he's right. And he continues to refute them throughout the book. He'll respond with a refute, and God says that then his comments are correct. Therefore, that's similar to what you're reading over here, right? He's justified in his claims. He holds. He's being honest, right? Remember, Eob loses the argument at the end. He tells Eob, if you remember, what does he tell Eob?
The question, I created everything.
Where were you when I created the world? And if you don't like what you see, do something about it. Very, very, all the wind is taken out of Eob's claims because what do you mean? What should I be able to do about it? Well, that's how it works. Fight against it, take a stand, and I'll stand behind you. I'm not going to go totally Eob now. That's 6 months of discussion, a year. But there is a common denominator because Abraham says, he tells Abraham, before, right? In the Brit Bein, he says, your reward's great. So what do you tell God? What are you going to give me? I'm childless, and domestic, he's the guy that's going to inherit all of this, that part of the world. And they'll never hold on to this, right? So the whole thing is going down the tubes, right? Eliyahu, she's coming to get him after he took care of 450 lowlifes, right? The Nevi'ir Sheker and so on and so forth, and Baal, and he says, I'm the only guy left, the only Navi left, and look at me now. She's coming with 400 guys. That's like saying with an army, a full army, like saying in today's times, coming with 10,000 guys, right? 400 guys coming to get me, and she is the scum of the earth, really scum of the earth. She's Jezebel, right? She's queen of Israel in the north. With her husband is Ahab, right? And so God tells him, what are you doing here when he gets to Horeb after 40 days and 40 nights? And so therefore, yes, it is the same, because God tells him. What does God tell him? No, he tells him, he says, there's a loud sound. It's not the sound. It's not the sound. It's not the wind. I'm going to call them a imperceptible sound, meaning you can't see my actions. And that's the way the world works. The next day he's there. We've spoken about this many times. What are you doing here? The first time he said it. Now he says it again. And Eliyahu repeats himself word for word, meaning he doesn't buy the answer. And he doesn't go back to work and go set things up for the future. right? And he does. He's a faithful servant.
Buy it or doesn't understand?
Doesn't buy it.
He
He understands what God says. He doesn't like it. He doesn't like it. That's why he's there the next day. Well, he comes the next day. He's when God, what are you doing here? I did this, and this is the case. Well, he heard the answer. Well, what is he repeating himself for? That's a very nice way of saying, I don't like the answer. I don't buy the answer. Now, Eliyahu could just as well have been, okay, that's the way it is. He's honest. He does not buy the answer. He doesn't like the answer. It doesn't work for him. And he tells God it doesn't work by being there the next day and asking the question again. And when God repeats himself, so there's no necessity for a third encounter. The second encounter made it all very clear. That's the way it is. And if you don't like it, too bad, right? So whether it's Eliyahu, Moshe Rabbeinu, after the Egil, doesn't like God's answer. And he fights and fights and fights and does everything in his power to get God to back off. And he finally does. He does get the answer he wants. God says, okay, now we're having the beat because Moshe changes position. He kept trying to get God to move off of center by telling him, the people, you said you like me, they're my friend, and so on and so forth. He keeps working the people into, because God tells him, I'll make you a great nation. Let's wipe them out. And he won't accept that answer. At the last stage of his last prayer, when everything works, is what he says, forgive them because they're an Am Tishur. Do it because that's their nature. And God says, oh, now you got it. I'll do that. Why? Because that's back to the Eliyahu answer. Do it because of that. In other words, yes. You want me to forgive them, and you want it to cycle, and you want it to take time, and I'll let it happen in the future, and I'll make a covenant with you, and it'll be everlasting. That I'll do, right? So there's the common denominator with Moshe, the common denominator with Abraham, the Brit Tarim, there are other common, and in the Yob, these have a common denominator. There's a track. In Tehillim, you are now at the center. Remember, we said all of this last week. All of this is a review. You are at the center of Tehillim. You're at the center of Mizmor is what we want to do tonight. The 75th and 76th out of 150. That means this is what it's all about. The center of the thing is the bold-faced thing on the page. It's the highlighted, underlined, bold-faced statement in all of Tehillim. In all of Tehillim, everything, everywhere. It is saying, if you had the highlighter and bold-facing, you would see it. Highlighted, big letters, bold-faced, underlined, the arrows pointing to it out of the whole book. Why would you do that in today's times? When you use those literary markings, they are ways of telling you, the reader, okay, we're here. That's what happens at 75 and 76. We didn't get to 75. 74 is the pressure. 74 is the relentless pressure. And I told you, don't be afraid to read these words as words that are said with respect, but don't leave a stone unturned and are relentless and pressure. You would be afraid. Let me say it this way. You wouldn't talk to God like this. I don't think you'd tell God, why are you sleeping? Why are you sleeping? Would you talk to God like that?
Unless I had a good enough.
Huh?
Unless I had a good enough.
Oh, so you would.
If you had a good enough,
Would you talk to your father like that?
if you had a good enough reason
wouldn't.
to, if you had a good enough reason to, you gotta get justice. Abraham challenges God, Moshe challenges God, you gotta challenge when.
You got to challenge. You got to speak how you really feel. You're
You
just
have-
letting this happen. You're letting it happen. You said to Moshe, take your hand, put your hand in your bosom. It's going to rot away. Well, your hand is in your bosom. Ooh, that's pretty tough. Okay. The second part now, and continuing on this line, is that we said that when he says this is what I wanted to hit in the review, which I didn't have time for last week. In verse 12, for those of you online, if you have a Tehillim, there's more to 74, verse 12. Let me see if I could find you.
Right in the middle, there's a column.
It's the column number with the verse number is
total.
verse total. Yeah, I just want to see. We have one person online. There's Lee Greenberg here. Let me see if I could put up the what you're looking at to him. Just 1 minute. Okay, I might be able to put up. Yeah, I hope you could see this online. But let me make it a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I'm good. I can see it.
Okay, great. So I wanted to talk about this. I didn't have time to talk about it last week.
Well,
If you look where the words, I made them very big, samu, ototam, otot, in verse 4. Shagut orecha bekerem moadecha, samu, ototam, otot. I made it big so you could see the words ototam, otot. Right? They made their signs the signs. And then in verse 9, he says, Ototenu lorainu. We don't see our otot. Good? In verse 9. Now, what it turns out, which nobody has seen, and it's important for me to ask tonight's question for everybody that's listening. This is an important question. I can't ask the question till you first understand what I want to say. I'm saying the number on purpose so you get an idea of how important the question is. For 2,500 years, nobody noticed what we're going to point out in this Mizmor. Nobody noticed it. Nobody said anything about it. No one noticed it. What didn't they notice? They didn't notice that in the third verse, when it says, lift up your feet to the unending ruin, right? Kol hera oyev b'kodesh, all the evil that's being of the enemy in the Kodesh, right? Remember, he's talking about the temple. In that word meshuot, the meshuot, I made it big so you could see it. You see that the word meshuot has the word ot in it. Well, Morris, is that word meshuot an accident? It just happens to have the word that refers to them. Lift up your feet to the meshuot, right? To the meshuot. Oh, that's funny. The word ot is in there. Well, not only do you find it there, but in verse 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, what he does is he starts to talk about the otot that God did. For example, well, first you should notice that in verse 12, he says, Velohim malki mikedim, and my God, king from old, poel yeshuot b'kerev haaretz, who did yeshuot in the land. You see the word yeshuot? Well, yeshuot is nothing more the same as ot. It's an ayin instead of a aleph. But of course, as we've shown numerous times in Tehillim, that the Navi uses the aleph and the ayin interchangeably because they're the same sound. Yeshuot, yeshuot. One is coming from first of all, the Ashkenazim yeshuot, yeshuot. It's all the same, right? But for us, it's yeshuot, yeshuot. But it's still a ot sound, even though it's a ot. It's still ot at the end, and the other one is ot. So you see that right before it, he puts in. Then he says, "Ata porarta bo'osechayam." You can look at the English Mars. Ata porarta, you, second person, porarta. The verb ends with the word you, porarta.
Drove back.
Right. Bo'ozecha, in your strength, the water. You drove the water back. What does driving the water back remind you of? Yeah, right? You did that. Shibarta Rashid Taninim al Hamayim.
Smash the heads of the monsters in the water.
Then he says in verse 14, Atarisasta Rashi Leviathan.
You who crush the heads of Leviathan,
Titanenu Machala Am Lesiyim.
who left him as food for the denizens of the desert.
Then he goes, Ata Bakata Mayan Banahal.
With you who released springs and torrents.
What does Ata Bakata Mayan Banahal remind you of? Only Morris. Tabakata Mayan.
You have a whole thought here again, but you think of
What do you think of when you think about Tabakata?
Yam Suf.
Yam Suf, you think of splitting of the sea. But yeah, it's Shiratayam. But you know what it also reminds you of? No, in the flood. What does it say? Right? The Arubot Hashamayim, right? They split asunder and the water started to come down. In this Mizmor, you have references to the flood, and you have references to Shirat Hayam. The ones to Shirat Hayam are all more than the ones of the flood, but they're right there. Now, listen to the next one. After Tabakata Miyama Nahal Morris, Ataho Bashta Naharot Etan. You caused to become dry the
Mighty rivers.
the mighty rivers. What does that remind you of? Caused to become dry. You split it, and then you caused dry land, right? So you already in 13, 14, and 15, you start to see what I'm saying is so clear, but we'll keep going till we finish the series. In 16, Lecha Yom, Af Lecha Laila, right? Day and night. So day and night is going to be, believe it or not, a flood reference besides being a creation reference. You'll see how. Go ahead. Mars is,
It
yeah.
was you who set in place the orb of the sun.
Ata hisabta called the gubulot aretz.
You fixed all the boundaries of the earth.
Kayitz v'choref atayet sartan.
Summer and winter you made them.
The only time the word kayitz and horef come up is in the flood. And no, in the flood and nowhere else. The only time kayitz and horef comes up is in the flood. Kayitz atay yisartam. 18. Zechor zot oyeb heref Adonai.
Be mindful of how the enemy blasphemes the Lord.
Ve'am naval niasu shemecha.
How base people revile your name.
Now, the Zechor Zot, remember Zot, what does that remind you of? Who knows what Zechor Zot? Zot Ot Haberit. This is the sign of the covenant. Exactly. Soli got it right. Zot, he tells him, Zechor, right? Right? Remember when he points to God, tells him to look up to the rainbow. After the rains, the rainbow comes and he sees it and he says it's going to be the sign of the covenant. You know, of course, that Keshet is 800, Kuf Shin Taf. We've discussed this before. We're not going to go into that flood now because time is limited. But
you're for Zot. Remember, in other words, those words. Zot.
Zot, Ot. Yeah.
Zot,
No, but it makes a play on the Ot. Zechor and the Ot and Zot all remind you of the flood. And over here, you have another time that you have the sound of Ot, Zot, Ot, right? Then in 19, Alti 10, Lahayat Nevish Torecha, Hayat Anecha Al Tishkach Lanetzah. Don't forget them. Habet Laberit. Look to the Berit. What does that remind you of, Sammy? Look to the Berit.
The rainbow again.
The rainbow again. Look to the Berit, right? Ne'ot Hamas, because the dark places of the earth are filled with violence. But it's Hamas. That's what brings about the flood. Now, the interesting thing is in the word Ne'ot,
The word Ot.
is the word Ot. So he uses the word for Ne'ot And now you again, not again, now you actually have the word ought. Aleph Vav Tav. It's noon, Aleph Vav Tav, right? Ne'ot is the word, or has the letters of the word ought, full, not missing the Vav, right? Mars, I want to just, you see that, right? The last time that you had that was at the very beginning of the Mizmor in verse 3 in the word Meshuot, right? So you have the word ought in the negative. Meshuot means in the ruin. So now in that word you have the word ought. Ne'ot Hamas is also such a negative thing, and you have the word ought in it. But the scholars all fail to notice that when he says ototenu lora'inu, and then when he says I'm Saba otot, I mean, then ototenu lora'inu. What they fail to notice is that every time he's using that second person and then the verb ending in the masculine second ata, porarta. If you look at the word ata porarta, what do you see, Morris, in there? Or taught. Or taught. Ata porarta. Aleph taf of ata porarta taf. Ata porarta. It has aleph taf taf. You even have the vav in the vav of porarta. In that one, you have the letters otot, right? You even have the letter vav there, even though it's out of sequence. But then you have ata resasta otot. Ata, by the way, each time he tells God you did it, he's referring to one of the otot. It's not only that it has the letters of otot, those are the oughts, right? Ata resasta, the ought. Ata hobashta. That one's another one with the aleph tav vav and right. That's another one. Ata hobashta. Then he goes, Naharot. Well, Naharot is ought. And Etan is Aleph Taf, has the letters of it. And then Ata Hachinota Maor. So in the word Hachinota, ought again, right? And then, of course, with the Ata, it's Otot, correct? Then in 17, Ata Hasafta. Well, that's Otot. Gebulot, ought. Right? Atayis Sartam Otot. Then Altiten is Mamash Otot. Aleph Taf Taf. Altiten has the Otot. And then you have Neot. And then the last verse, verse 23, has Al Tishkach. So the opening letter of the first two words of the last verse are Ot. And the last two letters of the closing verse are also ought. Ole tamid. So you have ought. So Morris, you see it? You have ought at the end, and you have ought again. First two words of the last verse, first and last two words, and you close. By the way, by doing that, you know what you really do is you take the aleph of al, the taf of tishkach, and the taf of tamid, and you end up with otot, right? That's what you see that, Mars, right? You're being this is what you call, there are, not only are they otot here in content, there are otot in the letters, because doesn't he say we don't see the otot? So now the question to the table. First of all, does anybody doubt? I can tell you that anybody I showed this to said, done, it's all over. Nobody saw for 2,500. It's there. It's not a dash. This is not a cute. This is a clear, unquestionable literary technique being inserted here to place the otot with the second person, so on and so forth, with the verb, right? Clear. And clear meshuot is a play, and clear neot, and it's not my imagination. It's there. This is done this way so that you could, Lee, you're seeing that, you guys over here, so that there's nothing to talk about. It's as clear as day. The question now becomes like this. He said, we don't see our signs. And he meant it. We don't. They make their signs are the signs, right? And that's what's known in the world right now. You open up the television, that's what you see, right? But it's flooded with all the otot. So what did he do? He put it in that for 2,500 years, nobody saw it. It was embedded in the text, right? So the question becomes like this. Did he expect you to find it?
Yeah.
Well, otherwise, what did he put it in for? But nobody found it. Well, if he expected you to find it and nobody found it, then of course you could go like this, or why did we find it?
Somebody did find it.
Somebody did, but 2,500 years later. But it's 2,500 years. That's a long time. 2.5 millennia go by, and not one commentator ever said, "Oh, it's all full of otot. There's otot, and it has the letter otot." Well, what is he saying by saying we don't see the otot, but he puts in all the otot? What do you think he's trying to convey by saying that?
The otot are there, you're just not seeing.
No, you promised us.
We do. What you're saying, they're there, you people aren't seeing it, you're not appreciating it.
But he doesn't say that. He says, you're not doing the otot. You're not doing anything. There are no otot.
No.
They're there.
No, he doesn't say that.
Wait,
He
Matt,
says, their signs are the signs. We don't see any of our signs. Ototenu lora inu.
they're
You're
there.
not making the effort to find it. No.
He doesn't say that. He doesn't say that.
But they're there.
They're not there. No,
They
I
are-
understand they're there.
They're there, and he's saying we don't see them.
No,
The problem is the we.
They
are
want
not
it,
seeing them.
they don't see, you
I don't
don't see
see
it
it.
now. He's praying to see,
I don't see.
just like we're praying now today to see a ought from Hashem.
Even though we don't see
You don't see.
an
We
ought.
saw it. We don't.
But no one ever saw this.
Takes time.
No.
I need a better answer than that. I need a better, that's Mars, that's what you were saying. And now you're sort of,
That's Hashem's response then is, like you said, it's gonna take time.
No. You're destroying it. The place is
May-
destroyed.
It's not gonna
maybe,
happen right now.
Mars, a shot?
Well, it's referring to the autot of the past.
Yeah,
And he's saying, let those resurface,
right.
right? So he's not saying that, he's trying to say
He's
that-
telling God, "Ata purarta, ta risasa, ta bakata, ata hachinota."
in other words,
You
when
you did. So now look to the berit and do it. That's what it says in the text, right? Habet laberit. Look at the covenant. That's the deal you made. Look to it. Zot. Look at the deal you made, because Maluma Hashige Aretz Neot Hamas. Batimale Aretz Hamas. So they're the Hamas. So that's so
the request at the end is zichor.
yeah,
Remember the berit.
right.
Right.
Which
Al
is
tishkach.
in the text that everybody always saw. What I just told you. Yeah.
Right. And al tishkach. Right.
Right. Remember,
tishkach.
don't forget. Yeah.
Right, which is recall, just like we've recalling the covenant.
Right.
Recalling.
Right. So why did he put it in the letters that nobody ever saw?
You need certain conditions before we can.
Subliminal messaging to influence God.
No,
Without
no.
God.
There's conditions that we required to be set. You can't just have there are conditions that have to be set up before.
That's not the answer. That's not answering the question.
That's why it took 2,500 years.
No,
I mean,
it's
It
Yeah,
hasn't
but-
been
one
revealed
second.
yet. He didn't see it.
No, the oath was
It's not
not.
revealed.
Right.
He's in a state where it's not revealed.
Right.
So he's not gonna, he's waiting for it. He's praying for it. It's not revealed.
These
It's
are
not
called-
there.
That's a little
Not
bit of
seeing
what
it.
Sammy said in his last statement.
It's
No,
not-
not that one.
No, it's not happening. It's not happening.
Right.
He's saying, when you did these things in the past,
Promise.
those things they were autot. That's buried in what he said happened in the past. let those otot
Surface. Right. So do you think he's saying it takes time for it to surface?
No.
Is that what you believe?
Time conditions, there's certain
No.
things that have to be in place.
No, that's not what he said.
You have to answer me the question today.
But he's not
You
talking.
have to answer me the question about why nobody ever saw something for 25, when you find something after 2,500 years and you see it, and when you see it, it's right in front of your face, but you don't see it, you have to respond to me something more than this. Boy, you're very observant. I mean, about me, right? It's not going to satisfy me, that answer.
It's not revealed.
He's talking on behalf of.
Talking to you? What do you mean, who's he talking to?
Nobody notices it. He puts it.
Nobody knows what about that the
But they did.
authors are in it.
They did,
Who's they?
when he was talking, when he wrote it.
Maybe his students knew it, yeah.
He's talking.
I
on
would
behalf
imagine
of
his
the people.
students knew it.
He's talking on behalf of the people. He's an Navi.
Yeah.
When he says in od Navi,
Mhm.
he's right there.
He's the Navi. He's the Navi, yeah.
So he's not talking from his own perspective.
No, it's.
Ototenu Lora Ino is a statement made by the good people who are getting smashed over
Mhm.
here,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So when he's saying let Zechor and let the Otot resurface, he means let them see it. Right? Let them see what's
What?
your actions taking place to
What?
resolve the situation.
Proof that you're,
Not it's
The
not so
guy.
much proof, but let your
Reverse or taught that
let your
aren't seen.
providence
Let
become
your or taught become seen.
seen.
We don't see them. By the
We
way,
don't see them.
he uses the word, you should have all brought this up to me. Ototenu lora inu, we don't see it. What do you mean you don't see it? It's right there.
No,
This
but
is their word. You don't see it. He said, we don't see. He doesn't say our taught are not around anymore. He could have said it a lot of ways. We don't hear of our taught anymore. They're not functioning anymore. We don't, right? He goes, Ototenu lora inu. We don't see them. Well, I see them, don't you?
Yeah, but
No.
So he used the word we didn't. Yeah.
to be revealed,
Mhm.
takes maybe 1,000 years for it to be revealed.
Mm.
Dead by them, but
Mm.
they're being smashed by
When
it.
the time comes, when it will be revealed. And the whole world, when the word would be revealed.
It's not very comforting.
now.
Words are not
revealed it.
revealed today
It's not very comforting.
in a large scale.
They're getting
he's
white.
asking for now to happen.
It's not a comforting thought.
What's not comforting?
That They'll be revealed whenever. We'll find
You
out.
think
Well,
that's not comforting? Wait till you hear God's answer in the next Mizmor. You think that's not comforting? That's a great one.
Like, he's not just writing for his people or anything, maybe he's writing prophetically, he's writing for.
He's getting wiped out.
Right, and that's why it was hidden.
Yeah, it's not necessarily for the people, yeah, they're not seeing it, people aren't seeing it.
That's not
People
why
that can see
he's making a statement. They are hidden. We're not seeing them. Now, 2,500 years later, we are seeing them.
Really? I'm not.
No. You're talking about on the literary level, but he's talking about the reality. He says they don't see it. When you did those things, he buries in the words, those things were the otot. That's what he's signifying by putting otot into the wording describing those actions. When you did that, those things were otot.
Yeah.
It's the action that has to get done. He wants the action to
He
take
wants-
place, right?
Now,
Don't be inactive.
He's praying
Take
for-
action. That's gonna be that's when the otot will be
now,
recognized.
he wants them now. That's
You
why.
want- you want-
So
He's
that's
praying
why
for
he
God.
put it in the letters?
It's not-
Yeah. Why
Right.
not?
Mm.
In other words, it's put in there to say, those are the otot. Those are otot.
Well, those were the author. We want.
Well, those were, they were,
We wanna
but
know.
those are the ones that people recognize otot. He's gonna literally,
I don't need a.
Put it in the wording. Those- actions are otot.
They were.
They were auto.
We need new author now. We need different set of
He didn't
actions.
say we didn't need no auto. He just said, we don't see you acting.
Right,
Right.
but we don't need a Kriyat Yam Suf author now. We need a different type of thing though.
Maybe you
No,
need,
to focus.
maybe you need a Kriyat Yamsuf level ought
Yeah.
of that caliber.
Right,
You could say that.
yeah, but
What were the other promises? What were the
No,
other?
sorry,
No, when he really came through. When,
No, he
No,
said,
when the
providence-
enemy was defeated.
providential
what was
action.
it when he said this is gonna be the author, this is gonna be the author? When-
Those are
Providence-
providential action. The author are referred to as the 10 plagues,
Yeah,
right?
he tells them-
The 10 plagues are actions that are
No,
seen
but
to
he
be
tells
taken
them-
against
Abraham,
the
Joe,
Very
oppressive.
subtle.
But it's not always
He's
that.
saying
Or taught them of him. Those are the words.
So where's the order? It's not there. It's still not being really revealed. It's not there. When you read this, it's not revealed. It's a subtle indictment on God. Where's the order? He did this.
Well, that's what that the indictment was, that is what he said in the actual words. We don't see the signs.
He's
And what would the
he's
sign-
showing the sign. But
In
it's
the
not being
context, he
revealed.
said the words, that's how
Why
put
didn't
out
you reveal? I want to see the sign. I want to see, where's the sign now?
the sign that I'm not gonna destroy the world anymore.
So why put it in the letters and write the
Okay.
word
Yeah.
ought everywhere?
Over and over.
Why keep saying
This is
ought
not gonna be the end.
everywhere?
Because he's nailing it into God. He's
Destruction.
nailing it into God.
Right, it could be the ought, like I think Sully is saying,
Yeah,
that the ought was that
Look.
this won't be the end.
how
I'm
you
not
doing?
destroying the world anymore.
Right, give us some clear indication that this isn't gonna be
The
the
end
way
of the
this is
world.
gonna just.
That's what he's
And-
trying.
The original oath was Mabul.
But that's.
No
what he-
more flood, no more destruction of the world.
Okay,
So now we need another oath like that to bring us out of,
okay,
the world is coming to an end now.
yeah,
And show us an oath that it's not gonna come to an end like you promised the first time.
he never said any of that in his word. There's what he said in
Well,
Hud Navi, we don't know
What
anymore.
were the purpose of the oath though? The purpose, the Mabul, what were the purpose of the oath?
He's reminding, he tells him, he says, remember the biddy, look to the biddy,
Right.
look to the biddy, that's what he tells them, look at the kishet,
Right.
right? Look to the biddy, because Malu Mahashke Edison or Hamas. Al Yeshev Dach Niklam Ani Vibyon Yehalu Shemecha. Huma, arise, riba, ribecha, fight your battles. Zichor het patra, remember your abuse, the herpa,
We take that.
mini naval, kol hayom, al tishka, remember, now he says, don't forget, kol sorecha, the voice of your enemy, of your enemies, she'on kamecha ole tamid, right?
Pasuk 20 is backwards then. I bet the Brit meaning the Keshet. Because the world was filled with Hamas, but that was
Right.
before the Keshet.
Okay.
So he's coming and saying that when we have another situation of Hamas, which is.
No, we have another situation of, yes, of Hamas.
Right.
So look to the
That-
bidit,
that
like
same-
you said
The same
there.
one, the parallel that you did previously.
Yeah,
Right. so-
yeah. So he does say he makes the prayer at the end of Neot Hamas. No one reads the words Neot Hamas can't think
Of the Mabul, yeah.
of. Oh, you got to think of the Mabul, right? Malahar, right? It's Hamas and Zichor and Al Tishkah. You can't forget. You can't miss that.
The question is, what is he specifically trying to accomplish?
By putting in otot.
In him is more,
It-
that's saying,
We don't see him.
We don't see it. That's the question.
That's my question. So
Good.
one answer that came out of the room so far has been something like this. I mean, it's something like he's going to emphasize that we don't see the otot. So he's saying it in every fiber, quote unquote, of his being. Like every word that's coming out of his mouth, every syllable, every vowel, every consonant, right? Everything that's coming out is saying, what are you doing? No otot, no otot, no. It's like saying like this, where's the otot? You forgot the otot. What happened to the otot? Remember the otot. You're not doing the otot. We need otot. They're the otot. It's almost like he's saying it nonstop. You did the otot. We don't see the otot. Look at the otot. So he just keeps going, ought.
Yeah, but that's.
It's one
because
long ought,
He doesn't say it clear, right,
right?
overtly, because I think like. let's-
Because it's not here.
No, let's combine with what Sammy's saying.
Subliminal
There's
messages.
thoughts that are going on. I know that you're active, but let it be known that you're
You
active.
bring it out of.
Bring it out of its,
He's not active. Sorry, he's telling them there's.
No, Mars is saying he's active now, you just can't see
Do
it.
it.
You are
Right,
doing
make
things,
it overt.
but you can't see it.
Pull back the curtain.
You can't see that. Didn't he tell him I work with Kol De'Omed Daka? Kol De'Omed Daka means things are happening, you just can't hear them. Mars is saying it's happening, you just can't see it.
That's what he does.
Bring it all
That's exactly what he does.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's
Right.
just bring it all together.
I said there's a common denominator.
Common denominator is God's there, acting, you're not gonna hear it, you're not gonna
Right.
see it, you're not gonna.
Imperceptible, don't we say imperceptible?
Imperceptible.
Imperceptible
It's-
means
you
you can't perceive it,
You could barely.
right?
No, he says it's.
Yes, it's the set, but that's the point. If you're not listening carefully,
gotta be
exactly, if you're not,
concentrated.
right, if you're not listening for it, you'll
Or
miss
think
it.
about it.
Or there's noise around.
Anyone,
doesn't let you hear it.
anyone.
Or there's
If you're
noise,
gonna see God's actions are
and
not
this is about
something
noise.
that you just see it go by you and, in front of your face.
This is about noise. There's
Anyone.
noise here. No, he talks about noise.
You have
He
to
says
be
the cold zodiac, the voice, the sound, the din, the net, it's blasting loud. You hear there, but you don't
It's
hear.
noise around.
You,
You can't hear
you,
it, so it was-
you can't hear
Yeah,
anything.
your phone's red.
Even if you want to listen, you can't hear anything because you need silence. Because he says you can't hear it, it's barely perceptible. In here, you can't hear anything. There's this enemy screaming at them.
Overbearing or
It's the same thing that you said about Abraham.
Trashing the day, trashing
He said,
it.
but not only,
Humiliate, they're laughing.
That's
with
why
their
Abraham has
trashing,
to ask.
What
do you mean?
Your name.
Yeah.
I don't have any, what are you talking about?
Their sign,
Show
and
me.
you don't see your sign.
But
But Mark's saying.
Mars is saying, but I know that you are acting now. I know that at this very moment you are doing. If you look, you'll see Otot. That's what you say, right?
It will be revealed.
Right.
If you look, you'll see it, but you could only see it. It's a good joke. Retrospectively, now we could look at it, but while it was going on, now you could look and see these Otot, right?
God is
It's
acting.
hidden beneath the surface.
You suggested
Today-
that I eat at the Horai?
Today you say.
Yeah, of course. That's the same thing. I said that's Moshe's thing. You can only see me retrospectively. Yeah.
You don't see it today.
Right.
God is acting and he's, even though we don't see it.
Right.
How about right now?
That's what I'm saying.
Like
Today,
right now.
Well, go
Right.
back
Right.
8 years ago, the Holocaust thing, we
Yeah.
didn't see, we had no idea. The noise was drowning us out, we were
God is
destroyed.
moving things,
And
you
3
don't-
years later, we were able to see a little bit of the light, see a little bit of the Otot.
Right.
In retrospectively, we see it now.
Now you look at 1948 and you look at 3 years after the end of World War II, you became an independent nation 36 months later. So, okay. So we talked about it enough time. This is what I really wanted to talk about this tonight. I have been fighting with this for a long time. The reason Joe, you gotta talk a little lower. I don't mind if you have
What did he do?
Joe. Okay, he's talking loud,
But the whole class is.
yeah. So now I'll tell you why I brought this up. I've been fighting with this for the longest time. What?
For 2,500 years.
For 25 years. I've been fighting with it for a long time because I have in the commentary, in the above chart, each of the 3 letters of the word ought is highlighted in a different color, aleph in red, vav in blue. You don't see it, it's a different chart. Tav in green. The letter ayin is also highlighted, etc., etc. Within a word, or consecutive words indicated in some of the boxes are in verse 3, 4, 9, 12, 20, etc. Illustrate words simply create the phonetic sound ought or taught, regardless of spelling. In addition, in verses 13 to 17, we find boxes encapsulating the 7. By the way, there are 7 of those. The 7 you phrases. in which the pronoun atah, referring to God, is consistently followed by a verb describing his mighty deeds in the days of old. All of these phrases contain the letter sequence aleph, taf, taf, or tod. Other boxes encapsulate consecutive words with combinations of initial and/or final letters that either spell or sound like ought or taught when read in normal and or reverse order, or consecutive words including the letters that spell or sound like ought or taught written in any order. Several significant points emerge from the data. The letters comprising the word sign, aleph, vav, taf, occur at almost balanced numbers of times in Psalm 74, 55, 59, and 56 times respectively, while aleph and vav occur with average or below average frequency in relation to other psalms. It is notable that taf, which occurs with unusually high frequency, ninth highest of any psalm, and density, third highest. In addition, due to the large number of feminine plural nouns and second-person perfect verbs, this text reflects the highest density of words in taf of any psalm by far. That was the letter I had to hold on to, taf, because the aleph was it's a vowel. What do you want to do with a vowel? But taf, highest by far in any by far. It is unusual. It is this unusual frequency of the letter taf that creates the effective balance of the letters of the word ought and the ubiquitous repetition of the sound ought or taught throughout the psalm. We contend that this was, listen carefully what I write. We contend that this was an intentional decision on the part of the psalmist meant to provide the composition with an orthographic and phonetic skeletal structure which causes it to be full of God's signs in every conceivable way. Remember I told you, it's like every possible way. There's no way you get at it. Backwards, forwards, upside, inside on an atomic level, right? Even though verse 9 explicitly states that we know, quote, we no longer see our signs, the psalmist subtly indicates through this technique that God's signs are truly ever present. Did you hear how I said it?
Yeah.
He is cognizant of God's signs, and he knows. That's what she said. I'm telling you, right? That's the same sign. I'm saying what I just said is basically that he is subtly that through this God's signs are truly ever present, as illustrated by the chart. The phonetic sound ought and taught, regardless of spelling, are encountered throughout the psalm after consecutive occurrences of each in verses 3 to 6. Meshuot, ototam, otot, kadumot. First notable dry spell. Now listen carefully. The first notable dry spell is in the 7th and 8th verses. This is followed directly by the phrase at the beginning of verse 9, Ototenu lorainu, which can be seen both as a comment on the absence of the sound ought in the previous verses, and more broadly on the apparent absence of God's signs, both in the post-destruction historical setting and the surface level of the psalm. The absence of ought in verses 7 to 8 is reminiscent, who remembers, of Psalm 73, when the first dry spell of the letters Chaf, He, Nun appear to signify the priest is out of the covenant. In this instance, however, the psalmist may be omitting a sound ought in this prominent position to further draw the reader's attention to its absence. This coincides with the striking shift in subject matter at this juncture of the psalm. Whereas verses 7 to 8 represent the peak of the vivid description of the enemy's destructive thoughts and actions, in verse 9 and following, there is a shift to the resulting pain experienced by the people and the accompanying outcry to God for help. Thus, the first 8 verses, comprised of exactly 65 words, half of 1 culminate with an absence of ought, perhaps to symbolically relate the vividly described destruction to a lack of commitment to the covenant. However, from the 9th verse to the end of the psalm, comprised of exactly 130 words, There is a high density of ot sounds, perhaps relating symbolically to the multiple allusions in this part of the psalm to God's providential signs connected to his covenantal care for his people in the past. Along similar lines, it is notable that the letter tab, the only strong consonant of the word ot, is completely absent from verses 7 to 8, an oddity that is encountered again only in the 21st verse.
The guy-
Is that powerful?
Next question.
Is that amazing?
Next question. So the guy who's suffering through this, or the guy who's 1945, he reads this, and what does it mean to him? Is he comforted? What does this mean? to
Okay,
him?
okay, hold on to that question.
Can
Hold on to that question.
you let the question?
What comment is?
How did you find it? Did you see the taps and say, wait a second?
Yeah, I can't answer the question quickly, but I can tell you this. Remember that I had been working on Tehillim. I did all of the acrostic work by that time, by this time. I did all of the Korach work by this time. So I did the Al Naharot Babel and saw the word Yerushalayim and everything. I did the 49th
The Ayin.
yeah, I did the 49th Mizmor and saw the word Mavet, right? The 49th one is when you say the Beit Avil. It's about death. Every word, and right, it's all mort, all death. So when I came here, right, by the way, over there it's Mavet, it's mort, right? Yeah. What?
You also had the Sadiq and the Rasha. That one's also in the text.
Yes,
It's not,
yes.
what is it? You don't see also over there. What's the word?
In the acrostic.
Yeah.
In the acrostic, whenever the word Rasha occurs, it disrupts the acrostic, right? Yeah. We don't, next week, we're going straight, I'm saying it now so you know, we're going straight into the 75th Mizmor, because I said I would end on time today. It's 8:45. I want to take 5 more minutes. We're going to end in exactly 10 to 9. I want to read this to you just so you hear it.
Answer my question. How did you find this?
I looked at it 100 times, and I by that time I'm attuned to Meshuot. I mean, come on, Meshuot and Neot. Once I saw Meshuot in the beginning, and then I see Neot, I go like this. 1 second. I already had highlighted Ototam and Ototenu, right? And I have a spreadsheet in front of me, and I'm looking at it, and I go, 1 second, it's all full of Otot. It's all over the place, right? Because you become attuned to the literary technique, and you're looking. Look, remember something. When I found that there's a hole in the ceiling in the room that I found it, I jumped up. I was freaked out of my mind. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't believe the complexity of the Mizmor. I couldn't believe what the message. I couldn't believe. I didn't show you how the Shirat Hayam is completely embedded in here. Completely. When it says they burned all the Moadei Il Ba'aretz, that when it says
Yeah.
take a look at verse 7. Shilhu ba'esh mikdashecha, they threw down into the fire your mikdash. La'aretz halu mishkan shemecha amru, and you know what they said? Amru b'libam. Listen to the word. Amru b'libam. They said in their heart, meaning their thoughts, right? Sammy, you with this? Morris, you with me? Amru b'libam ninam yaha. Let's wipe them out altogether. Ninam yahad.
Let us destroy them altogether.
Let him wipe them out altogether. But what does that remind you of from Shirat Hayam? Amar oyer. Edof asig ahadek shalat timleim avshi arik harbi toroshi avdun. Let's take it. This is a short version because in the Shirat Hayam it's also the thought. Amar oyer, the enemy in Shirat Hayam, you recall what the thought of the enemy is, that let's get, and then there are repeated alifs, right? Amar Yev, Edom, Eseg, I'll go, I'll pursue them, I'll get them, I'll wipe them out, and I'll completely obliterate them. Over here, it gives you a short version. Amar Amru Libam, they said in their heart, they thought, what? Ninam Yahad. That's nothing more than a short version of the Shira. I just wanted to give you an example of one example of many examples of Shirat Hayam being at the core. So it's Shirat Hayam, it's the flood, it's the splitting of the sea, right? Porata, Naharot Etan, and so on and so forth. So there's many things in here that are embedded. I just want to read this to you and we'll stop. As we have seen, the second section of the Psalm, verse 12 to 17, marks a turning point, focusing God's mighty deeds on behalf of Israel in the distant past, invoking them as a kind of precedent for the divine intervention requested in the present. The divine signs referred to in this section are concealed not only in the sense that they are only alluded to subtly, but also on the level of the letters themselves. As noted, all 7 of the Euphrates in verses 13 to 17, in which the pronoun atah is followed by a verb describing God mighty deeds, contain the letters otot. Thus, in the section whose content centers on God's signs, we find 7 consecutive concealed signs in a row. Suddenly, and at the most relevant portion of the psalm, ototenu ra'inu. Now we see our signs, right? The phrase "remember this," zechor zot, in the following verses also conceals a sign, perhaps referring to the covenant as the 8th of them. The full word ought, I just want you to hear the end of this. The full word ought with the plenty spelling occurs only within negative phrases and contexts, such as haunts of lawlessness, no'ot hamas, and tumult, meshuot. As noted, the outright occurrences of the word itself in connection with the enemy's signs, verse 4, and our invisible signs, verse 9, are both highly negative as well. This feature is consistent with the message of ototenu lorainu, namely that the present lack of otot equals signs of divine providence, which were performed by God time and again in days of old, contributes immeasurably to the suffering of the people in the aftermath of the exile and destruction. The different spelling combinations of otot reflected in the chart are often formed by feminine plural suffixes. Vav taf, ot, that's feminine plural, right? In Hebrew, when you say ot. Second person perfect verbs of the form ata pa'alta, right? And negated jussives of the form al taf'al. Jussives mean commands, right? Negated commands. Al taf'al. Don't do it, right? Don't act. It should be noted that plenty spellings of the word ought formed by nouns with feminine plural suffixes are present in the verses preceding and following Psalm 74, forming an inclusio. The final verse, this is for next because we're leaving. Final verse of Psalm 73 and the first non-superscripted of verse 75 read as follows. You listening now?
Yes.
In Psalm 73, the end, Va'ani Kirbat Elohim li tob. As for me, the nearness of God for me is good. Shati badunai Elohim nahsi. I place in Hashem my refuge. L'saper kol malachotecha. You hear the word malachotecha? That's not how you say melachtecha. Look at the word. L'saper, to tell, kol malachotecha. Malachotecha. All your actions. So you have malachotecha. You see that strange word? Scholars all go, what's with the malachotecha? Now look at the Psalm 75, which we will turn to next week, after the superscription. Hodinu lecha Elohim. We give thanks to you, God. Hodinu v'karob shemecha. We give thanks, and your name is near. If you remember, that sounds like Vani kirbat Elohim li tov in the end of 73. Shati Badonai Mahsi l'saper kol melchotecha, to tell over all of your works. In the beginning of 75, Hodinu, we give thanks. Hodinu v'karob shemecha, and your name is close. Siperu nifleotecha. They have been told over. What was the last word, Sammy, of 73? verse 28. What is the word lisaper? To say over malachotecha. What are the last words of the opening verse of 75? Seperu nifleotecha. So at the end, he says to tell over your oughts. And at the beginning of 75, we said your nifleotecha. So there's a malachotecha at the end of 73. There's a nifleotecha at the beginning of 75. There's the words that we will tell at the end of 73. Morris, are you seeing it? And there's the words at the beginning of 75. They were told. Yani, what's around 74? We will tell the oughts. 74 tells the oughts. 75's opening words, we told over the oughts. Only the word is mamash nifleotecha. Then it's the word, your wonders. It says nifleotecha. It's actually the word nifleotecha. So that I wanted you to see. There's some spectacular, really nothing less than spectacular things that go on. One more quick thing. Why did the psalmist explicitly refer to the absence of signs at the same times as he chose to embed or taught in different ways throughout the psalm? To better understand intention behind the psalmist's sophisticated treatment of what it will be helpful to provide. So we go to signs of Moses' commissioning. We talk about that, and it's a whole long thing. And we talk. I spent a lot of time talking about Moshe's oughts, right, and what they mean. And then it goes on and on and on. When we have no time for this now. This the first ought in Exodus 3. I talk about that. I just want you to get a sense of what goes on. The meaning of ought in Psalm 74. Psalmist, what he's doing, reflecting on the perception of the people. Psalmist invokes God to act by saying that the nation has been searching in vain for signs of his presence. Indeed, as we have seen, the only explicit occurrence of signs is the absence, and so on and so forth. And Jeremiah 23, I maybe we'll do this next week. Jeremiah 23, extended criticism of the leaders of Judah. I think I'm gonna open up next week with reading to you Yirmiyah. We'll do that, and then we'll start 75, because I think it's worthwhile for you to see it. I try in one sitting. It's 5:02 and I'm stopping. I wanted you to get a sense of how difficult it is. You see that there's still much to talk about, and I do. There's a lot. Moshe's words, Yirmiyah statements. Maybe we'll do a little of Yirmiyah statements before we get into 75, just so you get a little bit of a feel of what he says as it relates to these oughts and so on and so forth, and we'll take it from there. All right, Lee, I hope you enjoyed.
Yeah.
And there's more than Lee. There's Jonathan. There's Lee. Wow, there's we got.
It's me twice, one on the computer, one on the phone.
Oh, very nice. Wonderful. Did you like, guys? Was it good?
Any reason not to have?
Very good. Thank you very much.
It's great. Thank
Okay,
you.
Great. Thank you so much. See you around, guys. Have a good one.
You got it.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We can Zoom now, it doesn't
That's
matter.
why I mentioned like
And
He can't,
how do I
go
stop
on vacation
recording?
anymore. Monday night Zoom and,
right from Florida.
yeah.
How do I do this? Recording.